Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of Serverless Craic. Myself, Dave Anderson, author at the Serverless Age and technical fellow at Bizarre Voice, and my two gentlemen here, let them introduce themselves.
Mark McCann, author at Serverless Age, stay-at-home dad, still working on my 5K times.
Michael O'Reilly, contributor at Serverless Edge, architect at Globalization Partners, and still not working on my 5K times.
So I figured today, it's been a lot of chat recently about serverless and speed, and something that we've been talking about for many years is rapid delivery. And we were chatting last week, and like it was yourself, Mike, said this great sentence: serverless isn't faster, but serverless first feeds rapid delivery. Yeah. I think there's a lot in that, and a lot of people when they hear serverless, they just think function, but serverless first is a whole mindset.
I think there's a lot to kind of unpack with that one. I think in the past there's certainly been, I wouldn't say like a lot of squads operate this way, but there's certainly been attitudes where you can kind of go and spin stuff up really fast and get stuff out quick, and you get out the door and then mayhem ensues. I think our experience has always been around, discipline and, what do we always used to say? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So like in this sort of space, we say serverless isn't faster, but serverless first feeds rapid delivery. Well, what do we mean by that is that, we take our time, so we'll design systems, we'll really get into the well-architected side of things, the 5 pillars. So before we go out to production, we're looking at our observability, we're looking at sort of, what we're doing around performance, we're looking at sort of resiliency, reliability, and all that takes a lot of maturity and a lot of engineering rigor. A lot of our squads, first thing they do is assemble their observability, their dashboards, get in front of their metrics, and then kind of begin that sort of iteration process. Now, the good thing is when you kind of get through that, so that can take a number of weeks. Sometimes kind of just get up and running. But typically, once you kind of get through that process and you've got that rigor, and then once you're actually out into the environments, that's the rapid delivery piece. So you can rapidly increment, you can rapidly experiment, you can get, instant feedback on what you're doing. And the good thing is like, we talked about, with serverless, effectively serverless is, cloud providers have observed a lot of common patterns and abstracted them up into managed services. So Amazon API gateway is a gateway, managed service is a gateway pattern. Lambda is sort of ephemeral compute, DynamoDB database. And the thing is they're all highly interoperable. Now, the good thing is there's only so many ways you can join those things. So you don't get really caught up in design or, overthinking, how we're going to hook this stuff up. It's kind of, these are your options and they're finite. So that's another thing that kind of keeps you moving and why it's rapid, which I think it's sort of lost. And there is that kind of, and that's when we kind of get into the, the building block. We kind of released a blog article this week around, rapid delivery is kind of like working with Lego blocks, just connecting the different blocks. So when you've kind of got your rigor, you've got your base, you're invested and well architected, your team is disciplined in relation to its approach. That's the whole slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And then once you're up and you're running, it's like lightning.
Yeah. Well, it's like the analogy that we've been using, the value flywheel. And one of the things that's interesting with the flywheel is you often see it on a steam train. People start building up ahead of steam. You start off slowly, the flywheel turns and it gets faster and faster. And then eventually it's flying along. Like I remember talking to Dan North years ago about software development. And he said a brilliant thing. He says software development needs to be rapid impact. Yeah. And then every time I talk to executives about let's do stuff rapid, they used to panic. It's like, no, we don't want to rush people. It's like, no, we're still going to do it slow, but we're going to build up ahead of steam. And then when we get up to full speed, we're going to be going really fast. So you're not rushing anyone. You're just slowly building momentum, and then you're really getting that rapid delivery. But no one understands that, or very few people understand that.
Yeah, I think it's even just the mindset about breaking stuff up into small chunks of value. that you can actually get into the hands of real users, quickly. We have all these, pipelines and patterns, and if you don't actually deliver value to a real end user and get that feedback quickly, then it's all for nothing. It's just vanity, right? And that's something that we've definitely learned, is that we have all these capabilities at our fingertips now. We have these pathways to production, these golden paths. We have these serverless first building blocks. We have all these managed services. But unless you have that mindset, that product thinking mindset, the product design mindset, and think, well, let's get something in front of a real user. Let's get some actual validated feedback. So all of the stuff that you've talked about there, Mike, and it enables us now to have better conversations with the real users about, is this what you want? Does this meet your needs?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we go back. Like the real proficient squads that do that, they're really disciplined about their engineering approach.
Yeah.
So when they talk about MVP, they include all that rigor as part of the MVP. And you've seen that in the past where they go too fast and they go out into production, and then before they know it, stuff goes wrong, because serverless is software, at the end of the day. But in order to kind of get into that sort of working relationship with, say, the business, and get your KPIs in place, and you have all that observability to kind of assess your impact and do all that sort of stuff. It's disciplined, and I've always found, like, my experience. So we've been doing serverless now for a long time. I've really gotten into serverless maybe in the last sort of 3-4 years. It was an interesting sort of thing. Like, so anytime you introduce like experienced engineers to serverless, they always think, oh no, can't do it. I like my stuff over here. I'm in control of all this, but then they spend a month in there and they become completely immersed in it, and they take off, because it's all the same stuff, only you've got far quicker access to things, so for observability are better, your pathways out, Mark, as you're talking about, are really good. So they instantly become way more empowered as well, and that's been an interesting, certainly, side effect. And I think
I think there's also the, when people say, oh, go fast or rapid, you just think, oh, they're just building up problems. Like, we've seen lots of programs in the past where you'll go really fast initially, but then you get weighed down by the technical debt, or you add on feature after feature after feature, and it just burdens you and slows you down. Like, we have seen this, but it doesn't seem that that's the case with the serverless first approach.
No. And I think that's an interesting part, because like we've a decent amount of experience around sort of bringing teams up to speed, and coaching and facilitating squads embracing serverless first, and that's kind of why we talk about the SCORP process. About SCORP. Like, SCORP is just it's a method for us to bring a group of squads together to continuously kind of it's a continuous learning mechanism, but we want to get these guys to communicate, learn about what worked, learn about what didn't work, but then also kind of drive all and share all that good practice. That's all driven around the well architected, because you do need a certain degree of support there, because it's such a fast changing environment, and there's new stuff coming out all the time, and you got to have that support network around squads as well to continue going fast.
That's a great point. I think the continuous investment in education. If if your team is sitting there just reading docs for 2 days in a row, when it's all about managed services, just to make a one-line change, that's 2 days well spent, right? Yeah. Instead of just knocking out loads of code, because you're right, with the pace of change, with the rapid release of new features and capabilities, just spending time understanding that and understanding how it can meet your needs is a critical differentiator, and allows your teams to go really fast. And we have reInvent season coming up soon. And every year it's like, we're always getting an eye out for what can we delete of our code base, what code liabilities can be removed, because there's a new managed service or there's a new feature being released. It's like, happy days, I can get rid of that custom cloud formation template, or I can get rid of that hacked code that glued together 5 services, right? So it's going to be interesting what comes out this year.
What's disrupted, like. And I mean, I think the thing I really like about that this mindset is, it is that kind of that we talk about the value flywheel, is as a team, you figure out your purpose, you look at your landscape to see if you can do it, what's the next best action, what's the next thing we can do to make progress, to start that kind of feedback loop, and then you're thinking about your long-term value, and you always keep that long-term value in mind. So you're you're building quickly, you're building rapidly, but you're not leaving a lot of baggage. So you're not slowing down, and you can gradually get faster.
Yep.
And the reason why you do that is because you're not writing reams of code. It is code as liability, and you're solving business problems. And then you're getting all the stuff that's complicated to do, like observability and reliability and like failover. You get a lot out of the box, so you're not spending loads of time tweaking low-level stuff like non-functional requirements. You get that for free. So it's very hard to describe that. So back to that original statement, serverless isn't faster, but serverless first feeds rapid delivery. There's a huge amount to unpack in that statement, but yeah, I don't know. For me, when people hear serverless, they still think of functions.
No, you gotta. I think as an organization, sorry, Mark, you got to invest in your engineering talent. The serverless doesn't get you away from that, and that's we're fairly consistent in that message that you got to invest in well architected. And I think in organizations that are embracing serverless, really there's a certain degree, what you're shooting for is a certain degree of uniformity or commonality across those squads that's kind of based in well architected. Like I think one of the most important, they're all really important pillars, but I think in relation to organizations and scaling sort of ops and things like that is the operational excellence pillar.
Yeah. So two questions for you. Do you think, so serverless first feeds rapid delivery, do you think you need less developers?
Yes. I think if you do it right, and you do it with the discipline that we've got, you cover a lot more ground.
Yeah.
Because really what the well-architected and sort of serverless first mindset is setting you up for is less code, more standard practice. And
I wouldn't necessarily say you need less developers, but the developers that you have can have a greater impact. And if they're delivering value, demonstrable value, then the business or whoever your users are will probably ask for more of that. So your team will probably grow.
You effectively get more return on investment for your engineering team. So the second question I ask you is, this might be controversial. Do you think you need less skilled developers? Like, can you hire a bunch of less skilled developers who can build more?
It's a tough one. It depends on the ecosystem and the environment that you have established. I think you need a high level of learning and ability to learn and ability to experiment. Whether that's more skilled or not is up for debate. But I think if you have a really good environment that has psychological safety, that has invested in learning, like Mike talked about, then you can take any developer and make them highly effective in a serverless first team. Especially with the it's not secret code book that Mike hides under his desk that explains the system. You can Google this stuff. There's training freely available. There's workshops you can do. There's a nice body of material that support a lot of these managed services and these patterns and these ways of working. So if you give them the time, if you give them that psychological safety, then any developer could be very effective in a serverless first team. That all being said, you are shifting a lot of stuff left onto that team. So the team is now responsible for security, for performance, for testing, for their CI/CD pipelines in many cases as well. So
more responsibility.
There's more responsibility, but that burden is lessened by those building blocks and those managed services and using that serverless first mindset and offloading the liabilities as much as possible. So there's probably a lot more concerns that they're dealing with as a team. So maybe they need to be able to do that. They need to be adaptable and have that mindset. But the actual liabilities that they're looking after are probably less than a traditional team.
Yeah, go back. Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think, and even kind of go back to your previous question, I think it takes less developers to do similar things, but the idea would be that you would use your developers on, say, new emerging stuff, and and certainly like working with squads in this sort of capacity over the last sort of 20 years is there's far more capacity for people to learn in these environments where they can they can work in this way and be creative in new ways. Like I think, honestly, I do think serverless has brought life back into architectural design again that we hadn't really seen.
Yay!
Your enterprises over the last sort of 10 years,
Yeah. And yeah,
like I mean,
I use one term. Do you think you need rock star developers?
No.
I hate that term. I can't stand that term. Let them be on stage and sing. You don't need them in your dev team. And I didn't argue you don't need developers, you need engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, what I was going to say was, if you have two squads and their flywheels are turning pretty well, if one squad invests in continuous learning and keeping their radar up for new enhancements and new capabilities and features, over time, they will outperform the team that isn't constantly learning, especially in the cloud ecosystem, especially in the serverless ecosystem, because they'll be the first ones to embrace Event Bridge, and Step Functions just launched their 200 new integrations, right? A team that is constantly learning and has their antenna up for what can we bring on board, what liabilities can we remove, what new differentiated capabilities can we adopt. They will outperform massively a team that's just, oh yeah, that's just how we always did it. This is just what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's different set of skills as well. I think you're starting to see now in those teams, it's sort of the collaboration side of it is really a big requirement. And because it is, when you're kind of working in the way we've been describing, it's very hard to discern, say, the principle, say, from the
yeah. And maybe what you get into is a product development mindset.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then it does become, well, the most senior person on the team is the one maybe making sure that we're following certain processes, or we're keeping our quality reasonably high and making sure that our well-architected reviews are done, and sort of managing relationships with the product owners, and
maybe using their experience to help and prioritize as opposed to being the smartest person in the team.
Exactly.
And I think that structure, that well-architected serverless first sort of structure, that discipline, gives you greater freedom. It gives you freedom to go fast. It gives you that autonomy that you want to give your squads. And we've seen this time again. If they're delivering a well-architected solution and they can demonstrate that to us, then you have a lot of autonomy. Go for it.
Yeah,
fill your boots.
Very good. Good stuff. All right, so there we go. That's our serverless isn't faster, but serverless first feeds rapid delivery. We think that's true. So that's the crack. Thanks for listening. Our blog is at the serverlessedge.com. Follow us on Twitter at serverlessedge, and our book is coming out next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, bye.